Hello, and welcome to Good4Growth's presentation on addressing common behavior problems with me, Dr. Rebecca Baum. Please follow along as you will be asked to take a short quiz after this program, reflecting the content featured throughout the presentation. Let's get started. For our objectives today, we'll begin by getting a better sense of what we mean when we talk about behavior problems, what's normal, and what might be cause for concern. We'll then discuss reasons behind challenging behavior. While it can sometimes be tempting to think that children are acting like this on purpose just to make me mad, we'll learn that behavior often serves a function for the child and can be an important clue in helping us understand what they really need. We'll also talk through a number of different ways that we might want to address challenging behavior, both in terms of encouraging behavior that we like and also how to manage challenging behavior when it happens. We know that none of us is perfect, kids included, and misbehavior is bound to occur. We'll discuss a number of ways, besides just time out, that might be helpful in managing challenging behavior so that we can be prepared when it happens. One of the most important points to discuss today is that behavior problems are normal, especially in younger children like toddlers and preschoolers. Think of a tantrum, for example, as part of the learning process in which a toddler learns to manage big feelings like anger and frustration. Many of us aren't good at things the first time we try them, and we need practice. Imagine, too, being a toddler or a preschooler without the communication skills to let people know how you really feel. Tantrums are a good example of the need for practice. With time, experience, and maturity, most toddlers learn that temper tantrums aren't the most effective way to manage those intense feelings. Our job as parents is to figure out how to help them get there, and we are not perfect either. This process often involves some trial and error on our part, too, as we figure out what things work best for us as parents and are the best fit for our child's personality. This often means that we get a lot of advice from others, maybe our parents, relatives, friends, and sometimes even well-meaning strangers. It can be frustrating and stressful for parents when they're managing these types of problems, and parents need to remember to take care of themselves, including being able to take a break or asking for help when things are tough. If you've listened to previous Talk with a Doc presentations, you've probably heard about the role stress can play in child development. We all experience stress from time to time, and stress can actually play an important role in healthy development. Think back to elementary school, when you may have been nervous about an upcoming test. Your palms may have gotten sweaty just thinking about it, thanks to temporary changes in stress hormones. But you used your nerves in a positive way to make sure you were prepared. The test came and went, and hopefully you even got a good grade. You experience a sense of achievement, and you may even feel less nervous next time. That's an example of a positive stress. Sometimes stress can be more serious than an upcoming test, like perhaps a serious illness in a family member. The stress response still occurs, but other supports are in place to help you cope while your relative recovers. And lastly, sometimes stressors are serious, prolonged, and without those protective supports. This type of stress can be toxic, actually leading to changes in the brain and ultimately our behavior. It's important to remember that nurturing and supportive relationships serve as an important buffer for this type of stress, so we can think of parenting as playing a key role in reducing the effects of toxic stress and even in helping children successfully cope with positive and tolerable stress. Just as positive stress can change our brain's structure, so can other forms of stress. Research has shown that toxic stress, stress that is severe, prolonged, and not buffered by protective factors, can lead to fewer connections between nerve cells and between different parts of the brain. This slide shows two different pictures of nerve cells. The picture on the left, in blue, shows a healthy nerve cell with a number of branches that connect with other nerve cells, allowing for a rapid flow of information across the brain. The picture on the right, in green, shows how a nerve cell might look when it's been exposed to toxic stress, with fewer branches and connections. Ultimately, these types of changes can also affect our emotions and our behavior. These research findings help us understand what might be happening at the brain cell level when toxic stress occurs, but also help us realize the important role of parenting and relationships at preventing these types of brain changes from happening. As we turn our attention back to what's happening in the lives of children, let's discuss the different types of behavior problems that we might see in young children. We tend to think about these types of problems in two main categories. Externalizing behaviors are usually easily seen by others, things like tantrums, aggression, and oppositional behavior. Problems with hyperactive or impulsive behavior may be seen in children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD. Noncompliance is a term used to describe situations in which a direction is given, often by a parent or other adult, but not followed by the child. This may lead to yelling on the part of the adult and an increase in challenging behavior on the part of the child. We'll talk more about this when we discuss reasons why misbehavior occurs. We use the term internalizing behavior to describe problems that are more evident to the person themselves and may actually not be appreciated by others. Things like anxiety, depression, or low mood may be particularly troubling to the person experiencing them, and other people may not be aware that they are struggling. Even young children can experience symptoms of anxiety and depression, but they may not have the communication skills yet that older children do to help us understand how they're feeling. Changes in behavior can be a clue, so it's important for us to be on the lookout for these types of problems. In young children, anxiety symptoms sometimes show up as extremely picky eating, trouble separating from parents or caregivers, or bedtime problems that can seem outside of the normal range. Symptoms of depression or low mood can show up as irritability, again, that's outside of the normal range for the child's developmental age. In the last slide, I used the term outside of what's normal for the child's developmental level. 2-year-olds can be challenging people as they navigate the world of new emotions, learning limits, and dealing with their frustrations. While we might expect temper tantrums to occur for a few minutes once or twice a day in a 2-year-old, we might be more concerned if a 6-year-old was having temper tantrums daily, especially if they were occurring for 30 to 45 minutes. When we consider what is normal for an individual child, we need to be thinking about where they are in terms of their development. We also need to think about what types of problems are present and to what extent they cause difficulty or distress for the child. The more severe the symptoms and the difficulty or distress they cause, the more likely we are to make a diagnosis of a behavioral health condition or disorder. It's important to note, however, that even problems that don't meet the criteria for a diagnosis of a behavioral health condition can still be challenging and distressing. The good news is that we have a number of strategies that can be helpful in managing behavioral problems across this wide spectrum of severity, from small variations in behavior to behavioral health disorders. As we begin to think about why behavior problems occur and what we can do about them, we also want to think about specific aspects that can serve as either risk factors or protective factors. This slide reminds us that we need to think about 3 main areas: the child, their environment, and genetics. Every child is different, each with their own personality or temperament. Some children are easygoing and adaptable to change. Other children have a more difficult time. Children with a difficult temperament are at a somewhat higher risk for developing challenging behavior. Children with developmental problems or poor health are also at higher risk. When considering the child's environment, we see that certain parenting practices can serve as an important protective factor. as can support from the community, be that a small circle of friends and family or community agencies and programs. Genetics also plays an important role, as behavioral health conditions like depression, anxiety disorders, and ADHD can have a hereditary component. It is important to remember, however, that very few of these risk factors are set in stone. That is, even though a certain risk factor may be present, we have significant opportunities to affect the long-term outlook for children, often by helping to make a change in their environment, as we'll discuss. Now let's consider a case. Let's meet Sam, who arrives at the doctor's office with his mother, Mrs. Stevens, for his 4-year-old well child checkup. Maybe you know Sam or his mother, and maybe you've even been there yourself. Over the course of the visit, Sam has several temper tantrums, making it difficult for Mrs. Stevens to talk with the doctor. Mrs. Stevens, now somewhat embarrassed by Sam's behavior, tells the doctor that she has tried everything, including timeout, which doesn't work. Getting increasingly frustrated, she responds to Sam by smacking his hand and saying, "Dr. Baum is going to give you a shot if you keep it up." Let's think for a minute about what Sam's mother might have done differently. I'll give you 4 options. The first option, option A, is to smack Sam's bottom instead of his hand to teach him a lesson. Option B is to keep her feelings to herself, because doctors can't really help with these kinds of things. Option C is to bring a few activities to help keep Sam busy during the visit. And option D is to make sure that Dr. Baum follows through with her threat to give Sam a shot. If you chose option C, you're on the right track. In different situations and in different times in our lives, sometimes the other options may have been tempting too. Let's now spend some time talking about parenting practices that can be helpful in these types of situations. This slide lists a number of important aspects of parenting. We think of parenting as purposeful, helping to teach and guide children through new and challenging experiences, while also setting consistent limits and expectations. Parents also have a role in protecting children from harm and other significant stressors, as we've discussed earlier. Parenting also needs to be personal, ideally adapting to the child's own personality or temperament. It's also progressive, evolving to meet the ever-changing developmental needs of the child. Positivity is also important, helping to instill hope and resilience. And lastly, it should be playful. Throughout childhood, play is a key component in developing the relationship between the parent and the child. Through play, younger children discover new concepts and ideas, sharing in this delight and wonder with their parents, fostering creativity and interaction. You'll notice the use of corporal punishment or physical discipline like spanking or hitting didn't make our list. The use of corporal punishment as a form of discipline has been well researched. Evidence suggests that children disciplined in this manner are more likely to show aggressive behavior, and that any perceived short-term benefits are outweighed by likely harmful effects. Because of the potential for negative consequences, many professional organizations have advised against its use. So, a fair question at this point would be, but if I don't use spanking as a form of discipline, what should I do? For the remainder of our talk, we'll cover these 3 areas in more detail: understanding why misbehavior occurs, reviewing strategies and setting goals, and making a plan. This slide shows a number of different reasons why misbehavior can occur. Remember our discussion earlier about the importance of the environment. You'll notice that a lot of these reasons have to do with environmental factors that we can change or modify. In a moment, we'll review some videos that highlight accidental rewards, escalation, and emotional messages. Let's talk through a few of the other factors. Ignoring desirable behavior is an important one. Often, it's easiest as parents to give attention to negative behavior, and we may forget to attend to or praise our children when positive behavior is occurring. We might think of behavior as being like a garden, where everything we pay attention to or fertilize and water grows, and things that we ignore fade away. Modeling can also lead to misbehavior. Consider behaviors like yelling or using inappropriate language. When children see these types of behaviors in other adults, it can be difficult for them to appreciate that these types of behaviors are not acceptable. Vague instructions is an important one to consider as well, especially if parents are having trouble with children following through with requests. It's difficult for children to follow directions that they don't understand, so giving clear instructions is important if we want children to follow them. Same with ineffective discipline. Children quickly realize when we issue empty threats that we can't follow through with. Sometimes parents can also be inconsistent in their use of discipline, ignoring bad behavior one minute, yet reacting strongly the next. This can make it difficult for children to understand what's expected of them or feel a sense of control in their environment. And lastly, we again see the importance of stress. Children can sense parental stress, which can lead to challenging behavior, and children themselves might engage in challenging behavior when they are feeling stressed. This video shows us an example of accidental rewards. Let's watch.
Mom, can I have a piece of candy?
No, you've already had a bunch of candy today.
Please, Mom.
No,
Please.
I said no.
Mom,
When I say
please.
no, I mean no.
Please. Please.
All right, fine. Look, just one more and then that's it. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Here you can see how parents might accidentally reward misbehavior by giving in. In this example, this child has learned that if he whines and asks a few times, he'll ultimately get what he wants. He's likely to repeat this behavior next time, hoping for the same result. This video shows an example of both the escalation trap and emotional messages. Listen closely for how things escalate from a simple request to a shouting match. Also, listen for the justifications given for why the child should follow through with his mother's requests, and see if you think they're convincing. Off. Alex, did you hear me? I said turn the TV off.
Oh, what?
I said turn the television off.
I didn't hear you.
Well, it doesn't matter. Turn it off.
Mom, look, it's almost over.
I don't care if it's almost over. I said turn it off.
No, you don't ever let me do what I want to do.
What are you talking about? This whole day's been all about what you wanted to do.
No, it hasn't. It's been all about you.
Ugh, all about me? Give me a break. Now look, turn it off now.
Nuh-uh.
You know what? I don't. Go to your room.
Not a chance.
That's it. Go to your room now.
No.
So, there you can see how the parent and the child each upped the ante when they responded to each other. Also, while the parent may have been thinking all of those things about their day, it doesn't help much to verbalize them. It certainly didn't change the child's behavior and instead helped to escalate the situation. Let's use this information to revisit the case of Sam. If you remember, Sam was having a difficult time at the doctor's office. Mrs. Stevens shares some additional information about Sam's tantrums. She explains that Sam often acts out when she tells him no or when she's busy doing things. She finds his tantrums and aggressive behavior particularly troubling and difficult to manage. She feels like she tells him no all the time. She also notes that she and her boyfriend each have different parenting styles. She often yells and threatens, but then tends to give in. Her boyfriend yells and raises a hand to Sam when he engages in misbehavior. At this point, it's helpful to consider what types of things might be contributing to Sam's misbehavior. His mother has already identified some important triggers. Sam seems to have a hard time when his mother sets limits. This may be because Sam is getting a different message about expectations and discipline from his mother and from her boyfriend. Sam may also be acting out for attention, but unfortunately, he's mostly getting negative attention by engaging in this type of behavior. Remember what we said earlier about behavior often serving a function. Sam might be trying to get his mom's attention when she's busy doing other things, but tantruming is likely not the best way to go about it. Sam's mother also notes that she has a hard time following through, so Sam may have learned that he doesn't really need to follow directions because he'll eventually get his way. It's important to note that our goal here is not to blame parents. Usually they're doing the very best job that they can. Thinking about the reasons behind misbehavior is important in helping us figure out what to do about it. As we think about addressing behavior problems, there are two key components to discuss. Ideally, we want to be focusing most of our attention to promote healthy development. That is, preventing behavior problems from occurring. But of course, we also need to have strategies ready to address misbehavior when it occurs. This slide lists a number of ways to promote healthy development. Specific categories include developing positive relationships, encouraging desirable behavior, and teaching new skills and behavior. In our example with Sam, his mother may want to carve out a few extra minutes for some quality time together, which may decrease his use of tantrums to get her attention. We also see here how using descriptive praise, telling children exactly what we like about their behavior, can be used to encourage desirable behavior. Keeping children busy and engaged can also help reduce the chance of misbehavior. And lastly, sometimes children need to learn new skills or behaviors, which can be modeled by setting a good example and reinforced through the use of praise or small rewards. In our example with Sam, he might need a reminder to use a calm and quiet voice when he needs his mother rather than tantruming to get her attention. Let's look at an example of descriptive praise. Alex, thank you so much for doing a nice job reading by yourself. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
You're welcome. There are a few things to notice here. Of course, things aren't always this easy, but you'll notice that the overall tone was calm and positive, a much different environment than we saw in our earlier videos. You'll also know that the parent was very specific in telling her son what she liked about his behavior. This increases the chance that he'll engage in this type of behavior again. When we use more vague terms like good job, it can be difficult for children to know exactly what was good about their behavior. This table lists a number of strategies that we can use to manage misbehavior. Overall, these strategies are also helpful in developing self-control. We've talked about the importance of establishing clear ground rules and giving calm, clear instructions. Time out is a strategy that is used to remove a child from a challenging situation briefly, allowing them to calm down and prevent escalation. For older toddlers and preschoolers, we typically recommend that timeout lasts for about 1 minute for each year of age, so 2 minutes for a 2-year-old and 3 minutes for a 3-year-old. We typically use timeout for more serious infractions, like hitting or biting, and use other strategies to address minor misbehavior. When putting a child in timeout, it's important for parents to remain calm and briefly explain why the child is going into timeout. During the timeout period, the parents should do their best to limit their attention towards the child. When the timeout is over, it can be very helpful to allow the child an opportunity to engage again in the activity that they were having trouble with. Praise for successful attempts can help to encourage the desired behavior. It's usually best to avoid longer discussions about the challenging behavior until both the parent and the child are calm. Let's watch an example of another strategy, planned ignoring. Use of the word planned is important here. With this strategy, we're being very thoughtful about ignoring minor misbehavior, and we're making sure that we instead pay attention to desirable behavior. So, we're not just ignoring behavior, but planfully ignoring behavior that we don't want to see and paying special attention to behavior that we like.
Can I have a piece of candy?
No, you've already had a lot of candy today.
Please?
Alex, no more candy right now.
Please. This is only my second piece.
Alex, I've said no, so
Please.
we're going to be done until
Please, Mom.
it's time for a snack.
Mom. I've only had one piece today. Mom, please. Please, Mom. Mom. Please.
We'll talk later when it's time for snack.
Okay.
You'll also see in this fictional example that planned ignoring isn't always easy. The parent was trying hard to ignore the child's whining, but it was somewhat tough. The parent did stay calm, which helped to avoid escalation. In this example, the parent could also have walked away to create some physical separation, which might have helped. You can also see that planned ignoring might be hard when parents are feeling stressed or guilty, but it's one of our most useful strategies for reducing behaviors such as whining, making faces, or pestering. It's important as an observer to help support parents who are using planned ignoring, and as a parent to stay the course. Here's an example of logical consequences, another strategy for managing misbehavior. Let's look at this first example. Hey, I thought I told you to stop tossing the iPad around.
Mom?
Yes, I did. Look, it's an expensive piece of equipment. If you keep playing with it like that, then...
What did it do? There's no scratches, no nothing.
Yeah, I don't care. What I said is, look, I buy you all these expensive things, and you just mistreat it. Come on, it's done.
Mom?
You can see a few of the reasons behind misbehavior here: emotional messages and the escalation trap. Now, let's look at the second example. Hey, Alex, I asked you not to be treating the iPad that way because it's an expensive piece of equipment. Yeah, I did. And since I've had to ask you a couple times now, the iPad needs to go away for 5 minutes. So I'm going to put it up on the shelf. You can have it when we're done. Thanks. In this example, the parent was able to stay calm. She had given a clear instruction, which her son didn't follow. Because of that, she implemented a consequence that fit with the misbehavior. Because he wasn't using the tablet appropriately, she took it away for a short time. This is a consequence that is reasonable, meaningful, and also something that the parent can follow through with. Let's take a look at what we've learned and think about how we might advise Sam's family. Our options are: A, thinking about ways that Sam and his mother can spend more quality time together. B, using calm and clear instructions to help Sam understand directions, thereby improving follow-through and avoiding escalation. C, setting a good example, making sure that Sam's mother and her boyfriend try to avoid yelling when possible. Or D, all of the above. If you pick D, then you've been paying attention. All of these strategies will likely be helpful in reducing challenging behavior. Remember our 3 steps in making it happen. We've now considered reasons why Sam's behavior might be happening. We've identified some strategies that might be helpful and identified target behaviors. So let's make a plan. Mrs. Stevens decides that she wants to work first on reducing Sam's tantrums. She decides to work on using descriptive praise, planned ignoring, and logical consequences. She plans to try those strategies for 2 weeks, then check back in with Dr. Baum. She also shared this information with her boyfriend so that they can both try to be on the same page and support each other when things are difficult. This piece is important. Changing our behavior is hard, both for kids as well as for parents. Mrs. Stevens will likely need some support as she works on changing some of her parenting practices. Support might come from her boyfriend, friends, or relatives, and also from Sam's doctor. Although we've put a plan in place, there might be things that need to be changed or fine-tuned. Following up with Sam's doctor by phone in 2 weeks, plus scheduling a visit in 1 month, provides some additional support and opportunity to change gears if needed. There's one more piece of information that we might want to share with Sam's mother before we send her on her way. When we first implement planned ignoring, sometimes the behavior will increase for a short time. This is called the extinction burst. Consider whining. If whining has worked before, but now it's not, a child might whine longer, louder, or more often. If planned ignoring continues and the child receives praise for times when he or she accepts a limit that the parent has set, and when the child asks nicely for things, the child will soon learn that whining doesn't work. Understanding that the extinction burst might happen is important for parents to be successful. Our answer for the question on this slide, then, is D. Both A, that Sam's whining might get worse for a few days, but then get better, and C, that things might be a bit stressful and having a plan to manage stress is a good idea, are true. Sam's mother might also want to set a clear expectation with Sam about asking nicely before she starts using planned ignoring to help ensure success. Let's summarize what we've learned. We've discussed that behavior problems are common in young children and, in fact, are a normal part of growing up. Managing behavior problems can be stressful, but there are a number of strategies parents can use to promote desirable behavior and to manage misbehavior when it occurs. We hope that you've enjoyed this presentation and can use this information to help promote healthy development for our children. You probably recognize a number of things that you're doing well in your role as a parent or in interacting with young children. You may have also noticed a few things that you'd like to do differently. No parent is perfect, and thankfully, we don't have to be in order to raise healthy children. Just as our children grow and develop, we have an opportunity to do so too. If you have more questions about this information, please visit our website at www.good4growth.com. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to this Talk with a Doc presentation, and thank you to the Cardinal Health Foundation for making this project possible. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Now that you have completed the webinar, please take a moment to fill out the quiz, sharing the knowledge you gained from this topic.